Welcome to Pasadena Monthly. I'm your host, Justin Chapman. I'm pleased to report that this month, this TV show won a first place award in the talk show category at the Alliance for Community Media West's Western Access Video Excellence Awards. Thank you to the Pasadena media crew for making an award-winning show, and thank you all for watching. Today, after taking a look at what's been going on in Pasadena this past month, we'll speak with our guest, Dr. Bethany Ehlmann, President of the Planetary Society and Caltech Professor of Planetary Science. But before we get started, let's check out these Pasadena media news briefs.
The 2024 Summer Observational Astrophysics Retreat at Mount Wilson Observatory will be held on Sunday, July 28th through Saturday, August 10th. Mount Wilson's SOAR Retreat is an intensive 2-week residential workshop in observational solar and stellar astrophysics that is aimed at people interested in careers in astrophysics, telescope and detector engineering, or physics teaching and outreach. To learn more about the program, visit mountwilson.edu. During the City Council meeting held on April 15th, Pasadena Mayor Victor Gordo issued a proclamation to recognize April 24th, 2024, as a day of remembrance of the Armenian Genocide.
As we remember the past, let us also dedicate ourselves to building a greater future. On behalf of the City Council and the City of Pasadena, I do hereby proclaim April 24th, 2024 in Pasadena as a day of remembrance of the Armenian Genocide.
So I'd like to extend my gratitude to this distinguished day as testament to our persistent search for human rights and justice for the victims of the Armenian Genocide, and for providing solace to the Armenian American community by passing the Armenian Genocide Awareness Proclamation, in essence showing that the Armenian cause is also your cause, and for that you have our utmost respect and admiration. Thank you.
On Monday, April 29th at 7 p.m., the Carnegie Science Observatory's free lecture series at the Huntington will be hosting the event Using the Webb Telescope to Pull the Curtain from Dusty Galaxies. Join astronomer Dr. Jeff Rich as he discusses the discoveries that the Webb Telescope observations of ultra-luminous infrared galaxies have yielded, and how these will lead to a new understanding of supermassive black holes, massive star clusters, and changes in the interstellar medium. The event will be held at the Rothenberg Hall at the Huntington Library. Tickets are free. Reservations are required. Doors open at 6:30 p.m. Tune in online or attend in person. To find out more and to register, visit carnegiescience.edu/events.
Let's turn next to our lightning round of news updates. 1. Mayor Victor Gordo has formed a 710 ad hoc committee on the City Council consisting of the Mayor, Vice Mayor Steve Madison, and Council members Jason Lyon and Tyrone Hampton. The city has also launched an oral history project survey as part of the 710 Stub Master Plan to capture the stories of residents who were displaced by the construction of the 710 freeway in the 1960s and 70s. The survey will open for submission starting this Monday through June 30th, and the information collected will be used to select candidates for preliminary interviews with a historian. And at this month's Reconnecting Communities 710 Advisory Group meeting, the Architectural Resources Group consultant hired by the city to gather historical data on those who were displaced reported that their research indicates a majority of the homeowners consented to sell their properties to Caltrans in the 60s under hardship acquisition rather than eminent domain, though finding records of these sales has proved difficult. Attorney Christopher Sutton noted that they still didn't have much of a choice and it still wasn't a fair process. 2. The search for the permanent director of the city's Rent Stabilization Department is underway. The search committee will meet this Tuesday to review a short list of candidates. Then an interview panel will conduct final interviews on May 9th. This month, the Rental Housing Board approved a resolution establishing a clear purpose and procedures for reviewing and recommending amendments to the housing article of the city's charter. The board will consider recommended amendments next month and make a final recommendation to the City Council in June. Meanwhile, opening briefs in the California Apartment Association's appeal against the city's voter-approved rent control law will be heard in August. 3. The Pasadena Unified School District Board of Education approved an affordable housing project for district staff and teachers at the former Roosevelt Elementary campus. The school board also installed its first student council to engage students in the decision-making process, consisting of 6 high school students from across PUSD, who will represent their fellow students and offer input on board agenda items through preferential votes. PUSD has also established a student assembly, which will meet regularly to discuss and vote on board agenda items, amplifying student voices. Over at PCC, the trustees announced 4 finalists in the superintendent president search, including the interim Dr. Jose Gomez. After the trustees make their final decision, the new superintendent president will preside over the college's centennial year. 4, all of the 99-cent stores are closing, including the 2 in Pasadena. A group of investors, including the former president of Big Lots and Pick and Save, are exploring options to save many of the 99-cent stores in Southern California. 5, the city's Human Relations Commission invited the Hahn & Hahn law firm to deliver a presentation on the firm's ongoing dialogue with local groups who are impacted by a drive for racially discriminatory real estate ownership covenants in Pasadena in the 1930s and 40s, which was led by the Pasadena Improvement Association, formed in 1939 by attorney Herbert Hahn and former Pasadena Mayor Al Stewart. The firm said its aim for the dialogue is to develop and implement proactive measures to alleviate the historical effects of housing discrimination in Pasadena and support existing programs that address racial disparities in housing and home ownership. Last year, the Human Relations Commission voted to recommend to the council that the city remove Stewart's photograph from City Hall and revoke Hahn's Noble Award, but that has not been agendized yet. 6, City Council rescheduled a public hearing to May 6th about the Public Works Department's proposal to raise refuse collection and sewer use rates. The new refuse rates could increase by 7% each fiscal year from 2026 to 29, which would be the first time the city has suggested an increase beyond CPI in 12 years and 17 years for new sewer rates. Public Works said current rates are not generating enough revenue to cover operational costs and capital expenses, and that some capital improvement projects have gone unfunded in order to cover operational costs. The council will also hold a public hearing on June 3rd regarding the Water and Power Department's proposal to raise water rates as soon as July 1st in order to address rising operating costs and fund essential water infrastructure improvements. PWP launched a new online bill estimator tool that shows how the proposed water rate adjustments could impact your bill. Located at pwp.cityofpasadena.net. PWP is also proposing a comprehensive electric rate realignment study. 7, the search for the permanent general manager of PWP is underway and applications are now being accepted. Interviews will be conducted next month, and a community forum was held yesterday to solicit feedback, and the public can continue to submit feedback at bit.ly/PWP community survey through this Sunday. 8, the Charter Study Task Force will be submitting a number of recommendations for the council's consideration, including a council member appointment process that would be executed if 2 years or less remained on an unexpired term of a council member that cannot finish a term. A residency requirement of at least 6 months for those seeking to be appointed to the city council to fill a vacant unexpired term. An annual vice mayor appointment process with 1-year terms. The creation of a mayor pro tempore that would be chosen by the council if the mayor's seat becomes vacant. Term limits for the mayor and council members of 3 consecutive 4-year terms. More regular council compensation committee meetings, and the consideration of family care benefits for council members. The task force continues to discuss other topics, and the council will make the final decision as to what gets placed on the November ballot. 9, Vromans announced that the company will close its Hastings Ranch store next month because it was unable to reach a new lease agreement with the property owner over increasing occupancy expenses. The last day of business at the Hastings Ranch location will be May 12th. The company said that its Colorado Boulevard location is secure and the search for the right new owner of the company continues. And 10, LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger told Local News Pasadena that the Tongva Conservancy nonprofit that was reportedly in discussions with the county last year about acquiring the 230-acre Henninger Flats in the San Gabriel Mountains no longer plans to do so due to high maintenance costs. Let's welcome our guest, Dr. Bethany Ehlmann, President of the Planetary Society, Professor of Planetary Science at Caltech, and Director of Caltech's Keck Institute for Space Studies. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Dr. Ehlmann served for many years as a research scientist at JPL up the road here. Her research focuses on the mineralogy and chemistry of planetary surfaces, remote sensing techniques, and Instruments, Astrobiology, and Science Policy and Outreach. She is principal investigator of the NASA Lunar Trailblazer, a small satellite mission to map water on the moon. Much of her other recent scientific work has focused on unraveling Mars's environmental history. She's a member of the science teams for the Mars Exploration Rovers, Spirit and Opportunity, the XRISM Imaging Spectrometer on the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the Mars Curiosity Rover, and the Mars Perseverance Rover. She was also an affiliate of the Dawn Orbiter team during its exploration of Ceres. She's co-investigator on the upcoming EMIT mission, a space station-based imaging spectrometer to explore dust source regions, and is working to propose mission concepts for ocean worlds, Venus, and asteroids. So for those who are not familiar, tell us about the Planetary Society, where Bill Nye, of course, serves as CEO. What is it? What does it do?
The Planetary Society is the world's largest nonprofit focused on bringing people together who are excited about the exploration of space. So founded in 1980, right here in Pasadena, and the headquarters are still just across the way from this studio, actually, on Green Street. Carl Sagan, Bruce Murray, former JPL director, and Lou Friedman, JPL engineer, put the society together in 1980 because they realized that there was this gap. Like, our government was investing in space, people were enthusiastic about it, but Congress and our leaders weren't necessarily hearing what the people wanted, and there was no community to tie people who loved astronomy, who loved space missions, who wanted to defend Earth from asteroids together. So we are that society, 40,000 members strong, and even more, millions, to listening each week to our broadcast Planetary Radio.
And you know, Pasadena Mayor Victor Gordo, he likes to say that Pasadena is the center of the universe. I think in a half-joking way, but you know, he's not too far off the mark when you consider, you know, the impact Pasadena has in science historically and today. You know, considering Caltech, JPL, Carnegie Observatories, Planetary Society, discoveries about the universe made at Mount Wilson Observatory. Why has Pasadena been such a hub for space science, and what impact has this relatively small city had on science?
I mean, Southern California generally, right, is an aerospace hotbed, but I think Pasadena in particular has been a focal point for science, and a lot of that stems from having Caltech here. Some of the first, you know, astronomers who are peering into the universe, building the facilities at Mount Wilson, at Palomar, to answer those deep questions about the universe with telescopes. And then, of course, in the 50s, transitioning into rocketry, right? And really being at the vanguard of those first missions out in exploration. You know, it was a bunch of Caltech students and researchers who were sent up to the Arroyo because we didn't want to blow up campus, right? With all the rocket fire testing that was going on. And there's a straight line from that to landing rovers on Mars, flying helicopters on Mars, sending Europa Clipper out there to explore an ocean under an icy world. It's been a hotbed for innovation and discovery for the last 100 years.
Yeah, Frank Molina, Jack Parsons, those early rocketry guys have a really interesting story. So due to anticipated budget cuts from Congress, JPL, of course, recently you know, had to lay off 500 plus people, mostly impacting the Mars sample return mission. And we've also entered this era where you know, space exploration missions are partnered with or reliant on commercial interests, private companies, you know, which comes with its own set of challenges sometimes. You mentioned, you know, Congress wasn't providing the resources needed in the 80s. What about today? Is space exploration getting the resources it needs? Is the U.S. in danger of falling behind in an area where it has been and can be and should be a leader?
I think, so I tell people that there's kind of this tension right now, because as a scientist, we are at probably the most exciting time to be a planetary science since the Apollo missions, just simply because of what we're able to do. And part of that is because of JPL and other NASA centers across the country. Part of it is private industry and the lowering of costs for access to space. So it's just possible to do more in space because it doesn't cost as much to get to space. But what that actually means is that more and more people right now around the world are participating in space, whether that's students at a university launching a small satellite, or actually, I'm not sure how many people on the program know that India and the United Arab Emirates have orbiters around Mars right now. China has orbiters around Mars, so does Korea, and is about to send a sample return to the far side. China is about to send a sample return to the far side of the moon, just launching in a few months, something the US has never done. Wow. So we're at a point where more people are getting into space, and so it's all the more important for the US to double down on leadership. And so this is why the congressional budget cuts in things like science, technology, engineering, and NASA, this is not something that I think we should be doing right now. We should be doubling down on that investment, because that is an investment in the future. It's an investment in high-paying jobs. And I don't know anyone who hasn't looked out and wondered, how did we get here? Are we alone? Right. There's something fundamental about our drive to explore. So that's why, in my role as president of the Planetary Society, I encourage those of you who want to support space exploration to check us out. We're a nonprofit, and we help the U.S. be that leader in space.
Great. And you're the PI of Lunar Trailblazer, pioneering a small satellite to investigate water on the moon. So tell us about that mission and about the use of small satellites in data collection.
Building on what you said about commercial exploration being more and more important, Lunar Trailblazer, this is kind of my day job, professor at Caltech, lead scientist, leader of space missions. And Lunar Trailblazer is the first of a new NASA experiment where we're trying to take a higher risk posture to use more commercial components off the shelf to enable more science to be done per dollar. So it's a high risk, high reward type mission. For the last 5 years, with my team at JPL, Caltech, and our partners Lockheed Martin, we have been, building a satellite about the size of a dishwasher that will be launching later this year, and its goal is to map the form, distribution, and abundance of water on the moon. Water on the moon is something that 20 years ago we weren't sure it was there, but we're sure it's there now. We don't know how much, but it's something that would be a key resource for astronauts, and it's also just a key record of water delivery to the Earth-Moon system, meaning water delivery to Earth. There's an ice record on the moon of that water. So Lunar Trailblazer's goal is to provide those maps that will enable future robotic and human explorers to go find that ice, go grab that ice. One of the most unique features is that in addition to being a traditional JPL mission, we've spun up an operations center at Caltech, led by our colleagues at astronomy who have experience running space telescopes, and then staffed in part by students at Pasadena City College and at Caltech, who are on console working side by side with the professional staff at Caltech who will be operating our spacecraft. One of the first times a deep space exploration mission will be operated out of a university, and it's right here in Pasadena.
That's great. And is the satellite, I think I heard it was scheduled to launch in November. Is that still the timeline?
That's right, on track for November. We are not in control of our own fate in terms of when we launch. Because we're tiny, we don't get our own rocket. We're hitching a ride. We're sticking out our thumb, some organized hitchhiking here to get on a ride to space. We're going to be launching when the Intuitive Machines Lunar Lander number 2 launches. Some of the viewers might be familiar with Lunar Lander number 1, which landed and then tipped over. But it landed. It landed softly, sent back data. So the second one is currently planned for November, and when they go, we're hitched on the side of the rocket with 2 other satellites. Catching the ride to space.
And you said we don't know how much water. What form is it? Do we know where it is, and how is it possible?
So there's 2 types of water on the moon. One is weird and puzzling, and we're not quite sure what it is. But on the sunlit parts of the moon, there are certain rocks and soils that have just a little bit of a hint of a water. There's a spectroscopic absorption in the infrared that we can see to see that there's water there. So this is maybe like a 1/10 of a weight % of water, so small amounts, but in rocks. And so that's interesting. It may be recording water brought up from the lunar mantle, maybe recording some process of impact or solar wind implantation. The water that has a lot of people excited is the potential for water ice in the permanently shadowed regions of the moon. So there are places on the moon where the sun never shines, and these are deep craters on the poles of the moon. The moon rotates more or less straight up and down, unlike Earth, which is tilted. So if you have a deep crater and it's a sufficiently deep hole in the ground, you never get that grazing angle from the sun coming in. So these deposits are very, very cold, like, over 100 degrees below zero. And they serve as traps for any water that's ever, whether it's been erupted out of a lunar volcano, whether it's come in on a comet or an asteroid impact, those water molecules hop their way to the coldest part of the moon. And so one of the things we're going to do is peer in those shadowed regions to produce maps of where that ice is, how much is it. If you were an astronaut or a rover, how would you drive to go get it? That kind of knowledge that you need to have boots or wheels on the ground there exploring.
Wow. And you mentioned students are on the team. I think I heard that you helped operate rovers when you were a student, and now you have students from Caltech PCC on the operations team. How do we get young people interested in scientific careers and provide women, especially, these opportunities that in this industry that has been male dominated for too long?
I think what's so important, right, is to get all of the best brains who are excited about science to continue through science. It's actually a long road to become a scientist, right? You got to do the high school classes, the college classes, then a graduate degree, and it's sometimes a slog. Those classes are hard, right? So when we have those brightest minds as kids who are excited about space exploration, how do we give them the opportunities to, it is worth slogging through that intro physics class that is hard, because what's on the other side is an exciting career of science or engineering, building spacecraft, software, testing spacecraft, even welding these spacecraft together, right? It takes all types. And so I think giving kids these opportunities early in the career is so important, because it shows, what's on the other side of all that hard work in school. It's the fun of actually exploring, actually operating a craft on another planet. So you're right that I got my start in college, while I was an undergrad, having the opportunity to work on the Spirit and Opportunity rovers. So paying it forward here with our Caltech and PCC student undergrads, giving some of them the opportunity to work on Lunar Trailblazer.
That's awesome. So your research is focused on exploration of the solar system. You're planetary scientists. UAPs have been in the news a lot and in congressional hearings a lot recently. What's your view on whether there's other intelligent life in the universe and whether it's visited here before? Yeah,
UAPs, unexplained aerial phenomenon, previously known as UFOs, right. Unidentified flying objects. Well, look, I think there are more things out there than we completely understand, and that's one of the things that actually so excites me as a scientist. Right. I'm curious. I want to know what's there, whether that's what's on the surface of another planet like Mars, whether there's life underground, or it's like, what was that thing that just zipped across the screen of my fighter jet and seems to be going fast? Is that tech from our world? Some secret tech? Are those aliens from outer space who are caught on camera? I don't know what the answer is, but I'm happy to see the discussion, and I'm happy to see some of the data out there, and that organizations like NASA are taking a look. If I just think about the probabilities of things and I look out there at all the stars in the universe, I think it would be really surprising if we were the only ones. But that's why we're looking. So we'll keep looking. Yeah, for sure. It seems like some of the stigma around it too is sort of has evaporated over the past few years. Well, when you have government officials at hearings asking questions and learned professors on panels, and it starts to be something that I think we can and we should talk about. Right. Yeah, and videos coming out. You mentioned Mars. What do we know about the history of Mars? We think it had elements to support life like Earth did at one point, right? What can we learn from that? And do you foresee us sending someone to Mars within our lifetime? Oh, a lot of questions there. So, Mars, I love Venus, Earth, Mars as like three experiments for, okay, if you tweak a little bit of this, you move it closer to the sun, you maybe have plate tectonics, you maybe don't, you maybe make it smaller. Does the planet create life? Does it create conditions like a climate that should sustain life? And what's so fascinating about Mars is that the closer we look at the rock record of Mars, the more we see that Mars in the past, for really the first half of its history at least, was once a lot like Earth. There were lakes that you could swim in. There were rivers. There are hydrothermal systems like Yellowstone or hot springs that you could take a dip in. Wow. If we go to any of these places on Earth, they're teeming with life. And for the first half of Mars' history, 2.5 billion years, there were water-rich environments on Mars too. Now Mars has become cold and dry. Some of the water was sucked into the rocks, some lost to space. There might still be underground aquifers today. We don't know yet. That's one of the things we still are exploring and trying to figure out, is there water underground? But Mars is exciting to me for two reasons. One is the search for life. Did life develop, and is it still there now? And then second, what does Mars tell us about what it takes to sustain a climate that is good for life? You know, we've been fortunate that our planet has had that for 4.5 billion years. We're tweaking it a little now in ways that are alarming. But what are we learning as we look at Venus, Earth, Mars about how planets work and how rare or how fragile these sustainable climates are that can support life at a planetary scale? That's why I love exploring Mars. Mars has a rock record that goes all the way from start to finish in the way that the Earth actually doesn't. You know, we live in California. We're familiar with tectonic plates moving around. Creates this dynamic environment of volcanoes and earthquakes. It also destroys the evidence of the past as it's subducted underground or mushed into mountains. On Mars, which didn't have that tectonics, that rock record is there to just drive through and explore. So it's this amazing record. Wow.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. You know, I thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy schedule to come on the show and talk to us about it. People should check out Planetary Society and keep your eye out on the Lunar Trailblazer launch coming up in November. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here.
All right, take care. Before we go, here is this month in Pasadena history. It was this month in 1929 when the Pasadena Symphony held its first concert. Now known as Pasadena Symphony and Pops, the symphony was founded in 1928 as the Pasadena Civic Orchestra by conductor Walter Reginald Bland. The original members were volunteer musicians and Bland students. The city of Pasadena provided the orchestra's annual operating budget of $3,500. The symphony's first concert was held on April 29, 1929, 95 years ago this Monday. And last month, Brett Mitchell was named the symphony's next music director. He currently serves as the artistic director and conductor of the Sun River Music Festival in Oregon, and previously worked with the Colorado Symphony and the Cleveland Orchestra. He will succeed David Lockington, who has led the Pasadena Symphony since 2013. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of Pasadena Monthly. Tune in every fourth Friday of the month at 5 p.m. Learn more at pasadenamedia.org and justindouglaschapman.com. Drop me a line at jchapman@cityofpasadena.net. See you next time.